understood why the others hated mages so much. Hikuro was surprised at his companion's abilities, for which she thanked him, explaining that hard training was not enough for such a result. He needed an innate talent as well. Now Bjorn finally understood the essence of her character. She pretended to be a polite assistant, but she was waiting for the slightest opportunity to boast of her achievements. Alua announced that she wanted to collect some materials and asked who wanted to go with her. The first to volunteer was the dwarf, in gratitude for all the help the mage had provided. Bjorn decided to see what they could gather as well. Soon they finished gathering resources and Alua thanked her companions for their help. While Einar was imagining how many cream cakes could be bought if all these items were sold, the young man turned his attention to the statue against the wall itself. He didn't understand why the mage didn't even look at it. After all, it was easy enough to destroy. Some gamers have a habit of hitting the interaction button as soon as they see an item that stands out, or even just a suspicious wall. The guy was one of those, so he often found hidden objects. However, not only could Bjorn hurt Alua's ego if the common barbarian knew things she hadn't learned in a lifetime of research, but it could also seem suspicious, and that was best avoided. The second part of the citadel was nothing special, no useful resources or monsters, so it was decided not to linger here, but to go straight down to the third part, the underground prison. The dwarf asked the mage what kind of monsters could be found here. Alua mentioned a number of names, including a skull rat, a banshee, a death demon, a chimera wolf, a ghoulet lord, and a corpse golem. Hikuro reported that he had fought all but the last one. In Teiko's case, the girl advised to beware of corpse explosions. The power isn't very high, of course, but the pieces are poisonous. If it exploded very close, you could even die, but she promised not to let that happen. Seeing the moving skeleton of some rodent, Einar asked her friend if the thing was a monster. Alua explained that it was a skull rat. It had no rank, and it wasn't very dangerous in battle, so it only needed to be stepped on. The barbarian was angry, because she wasn't asking a mage, but suddenly she clung to Bjorn when she heard a scary sound. Alua then explained that it was a banshee. It was best not to touch it, or the experience would be horrifyingly unspeakable. Bjorn to her that he had heard about the abilities of mages to resist these terrible creatures. The girl marveled at the barbarian's knowledge, confirming his hunch. She used the first spell to gather all the banshees around her, and then used the second to destroy them with a whirlwind of fire. Finished, she announced with a smile on her face that it was safe to move on. Dungeon Stone is a niche game, but it has a couple details that could have hooked anyone. For example, the illustrations are so realistic you'd think it was a photograph. They were so common on the internet that even people who didn't know the game itself knew them. But the guy is once again convinced that no matter how frightening the pictures are, the reality is much scarier. A mage, who has an impressive experience of autopsies, a dwarf, who spent more than 1 year in the labyrinths and met a lot of different monsters on his way, and even a porter, who looked strong enough for his profession. All of them underestimated the barbarian newcomers. But in the end, they are the only ones who kept their sanity. Suddenly something happened that Alua, who was still tearing up, had promised to protect against a corpse explosion. Suddenly the dwarf screamed as the green liquid hit his eyes. Bjorn ordered his friend to get Hikuro away and protect the mage. The young man realized that he had to distract the monster or everyone would die. The attack tactic of the corpse golem was simple blast to hit distant targets, and the near ones catch to absorb. It couldn't get too close, because then the blow would hit the mage who hadn't come to her senses yet. And that's the worst case scenario, so we'd have to stay not too close and not too far away, and be bait to stall for time. Finally Alua came to her senses and gathered her strength and cast a spell, causing a vortex of fire that she directed at the enemy. The first phase of destroying the corpse golem, which required multiple torches, was completed in one blow. The monster's outer body had been weakened. What remained now was the skeleton golem. Although it was a rank 7 monster, a pair of barbarians could handle it by removing the outer shell. Bjorn ordered Einar to aim for the chest. After a few attacks, the golem slumped to the ground with a clatter and disappeared a few seconds later, leaving behind an essence. The rift is a veritable treasure chest. There are monsters found here that aren't found in a normal maze, which means the items will be unique as well, considering the paltry amount of experience you can get. The rift is like rain in the middle of the desert. The loot from the keepers is a coveted item for any adventure, but the main feature of these places is the strikingly increased chance of essences falling out. It's even strange that they stumbled upon the first one so late. Einar asked what they were going to do, to which Bjorn said that the corpse golem essence should go to them. They had done most of the work, and that was the deal. Besides, the characteristics are just right for a tank. Sure, the movements will be dulled by the drop in perceptions, but it's worth it. The only problem is the skills. Corpse Blast, of course, is quite powerful, but you have to pay with your own health points, and because of the acid fluid, when wounded blood will get on the equipment, reducing its durability. In short, the skills were good, but they would cost a lot of money on potions and equipment. Bjorn suggested leaving the thinking for now, since the essence wouldn't be gone for another half hour, and getting busy treating the gnome. Hikuro berated himself for petrifying himself at the sight of the golem and thanked the barbarians for saving him. Bjorn marveled that they had almost lost to the intermediate boss due to mental problems, having enough strength to handle him. Another reminder that this was reality, not a game. Hearing that Alua had come to her senses as well, Bjorn decided to discuss the fee with her. Bjorn told her that he and Einar were the ones who saved everyone, as one spell would not have solved anything. Raven agreed and asked what the barbarian wanted. The young man informed her that he wanted to take the Rift Stone for himself. Surprisingly, the dwarf didn't object, as he would be dead by now if not for the barbarians. Alua said she was against it, but promised that Bjorn would have a chance to get it, which he took as, "You can count on nothing more," and smiled. Then he told her about the essence falling out of the corpse golem. The mage jumped up from her seat as she explained that it was extremely rare. Even the biggest guilds didn't know its effect. Biting her lip, she imagined what could be achieved if she researched such an essence. Bjorn smiled even wider. He realized that now the real negotiations could begin. The young man offered the mage to take the golem essence, but on the condition that he would take the guardian essence if it fell out. Alua questioned whether Bjorn was sure he wanted to give her such a powerful and rare essence, considering that nothing might ever fall out of the keeper. The barbarian said he would risk it. Then he agreed without further thought. The dwarf asked if the mage was going to feed the essence to the boy, because he had heard that mages themselves could not absorb it. But Alua explained that it would be good for research, then pulled out a vial that was so expensive that it wouldn't pay for itself with an essence below rank 6. The mage said she had one of those alone. Bjorn wondered did she, and rightly so, want to spend her only vial on a corpse golem. It seemed to be a very rare item, so she was taking such a risk. Having finished her business, Alua signaled that it was okay to move on. They came to a corridor with two statues standing against one of the walls. Although they looked like gargoyles, the girl didn't feel any mana. She touched one of them and a book fell from above, which she deftly caught. The dwarf wondered if she knew about it beforehand, but she just laughed, saying she was lucky. Unfortunately for Bjorn, she stated that she would keep the item since she had found it. The young man wanted to come back here later and retrieve it, but would just have to watch the mage take his loot. Hikuro said they didn't know the first thing about distortion magic anyway, so he didn't mind. Normally, taking side items and monster items outside isn't allowed, but distortion magic helps avoid detection. However, the Book of Black Magic, the Necronomicon, did not fall under the lockdown, and judging from Raven's awkward laughter, she was well aware of that. For a while they wandered around the last part of the Blood Citadel, the Lord's Room, collecting items and fighting monsters, gargoyles, chimera wolves, and the second intermediate boss, the Bone Rider. 3 attributes of the horseman are encountered. The first and most annoying is sadness, which exudes a fog that causes psychosis and hysteria. The second and most dangerous is hate, which uses soul killing to lower the opponent's level. And finally, the one in front of them, desire, could regenerate with life force absorption. Alua said that she could bring down his skill with wound deterioration. And she was right, it was the easiest of all the riders, who also left behind an essence. According to the treaty, it belonged to Bjorn, but this time he decided to give it to Einar. It would be false to say that he didn't want to get it, but from a player's point of view, it was better to give it to a tribeswoman. Life force absorption works well with swords, and he'd have to give up weapons one day. And from the moment he entered the labyrinth, he felt that he could rely on Einar. She would not leave him in a difficult moment. So it was better to take his time and find a suitable essence with the help of a reinforced war gear. But the only thing he didn't have time to tell her was the side effect of absorbing the essence. Suddenly her skirt fell away, exposing her woolen shorts, and the girl herself felt like Bjorn had gotten bigger and the little gnome wasn't so small anymore. Alua tried to gently explain that the effect of the Bone Rider essence made the bones denser, but shorter. It would only affect the height, the strength would remain the same. But what she heard caused Einar to scream hysterically, saying that everyone already looked down on her because she was a woman, and now they would stop seeing her as a warrior. The mage noticed that she was much prettier that way. Her features had softened, even aristocrats would be jealous. Bjorn added that everyone already knew what a fine warrior she was. He himself, of course, thought that now without tattoos he would look like an ordinary girl, but he did not voice his thoughts so as not to aggravate his depression. The dwarf joked that if he took this essence he would be out of sight altogether, and Alua suggested a detailed check when he returned to the city. Seeing that her friend